we've known for a long time that children who are in houses with readers and books that they read, not just books, but books that somebody's reading,
Mhm.
and not always to the children. Like we know that children who grow up in a house where grown-ups read them for themselves are going to have an easier time learning to read. There's no question about it.
Hi, I'm Crystal Luce, professor of education.
And I'm Aimee Ketchum, pediatric occupational therapist.
Welcome to Plant the Seed of Learning, the podcast where we merge education and medical models to bring you science-based practical insights on all things early childhood.
Whether you're a parent, teacher, therapist, or policymaker, we're here to help you support children from the start. So, hello everyone. Today we are very excited to have our guest, Susan Engel. And I'm so happy to introduce her while Crystal shows her lovely book, American Kindergarten. Susan Engel is a senior lecturer in psychology at Williams College and the class of 1959 founding director of the program in teaching. Her research interests include the development of narrative curiosity and invention. Her current research examines how young children pursue ideas. Her scholarly work has appeared in journals such as Cognitive Development, Developmental Psychology, Harvard Educational Review, and the American Education Research Journal. Her writing and education has appeared in the New York Times, Washington Post, Bloomberg View, The Nation, The Atlantic Monthly, Salon, and the Boston Globe. Her books include The Hungry Mind, The Origins of Curiosity in Childhood, The Intellectual Lives of Children, and American Kindergarten, Dispatches from the First Year of School. She and her husband Tom have 3 sons and 4 very young grandchildren. Welcome, Susan. We are so
Thank
thrilled
you.
to have you this morning.
Thank you. So happy to be here.
Excellent. So, we are so excited to talk about your wonderful book. We both really enjoyed reading this. And let's just dive right in. So, we're curious, what inspired you to write American Kindergarten? I've heard you say that the idea emerged after reading discouraging stories about American schools. So, what questions were you hoping to answer for yourself that you felt wasn't being answered by the public conversation?
Okay, great place to start. So it was COVID, the first months of COVID, and had a sabbatical and was locked up in my office, unable to do my usual kinds of things. And I was working on a little thought project, trying to take stock of what changes in American education had improved schools and how we were doing, and whether it was due to particular innovations or shifts. And I was very aware of two completely sort of two two sources of information that were kind of at odds in my head, which is as a just a regular old mom and grandmother and citizen, I was aware that I was being flooded with news stories that were quite um, dramatic, I would say almost histrionic, about our terrible failing schools, and kids are languishing, and teachers are being sent to the rubber room, or kids are being sent to the rubber room, and the teachers are just fiddling with their pencils and their legs up on the desk. I mean, a really dark image of schools across the country. And I knew that wasn't right because I've spent my life visiting schools as a mom, as a grandmother now, as an employee of schools, and more of the time helping teachers get better at what they do and collecting data in schools. So I thought, I've seen good schools, and I've seen schools that were a mixed bag, some good things and some bad things, but certainly not this terrible, dark
Mhm.
image that I was getting from the public media. Then, as a researcher, as a scientist, I started to think about, I thought, okay, I'll look at the research to give me a picture of what schools are like, because these newspapers and documentaries, et cetera, aren't telling me what I know to be true. And when I looked at that research, all I could find were very, very narrow, specific snapshots. The difference between the way 4-year-old boys and 4-year-old girls play with blocks. How 7-year-olds approach the task of matching letters to sounds as opposed to, you know, 3-year-olds,
Mhm.
left-handed kids during right hand versus right-handed kids in a very specific tracing task, and all of that is for the general audience. All of that, I'm not attacking it because that's how good science is done. You pick out one very narrow question, you figure out a very specific way to look at it, so you know that the thing you're looking at is what you want to find out. It's great as research, but it doesn't tell you anything about schools and kids in schools.
Right.
And research has to be clean, and schools are messy, and so are
Ah,
kids.
oh,
And you know, a million forces are at work in any classroom. And, one of the issues that I talk about in the book, and I can get back to later, is that the science of reading is a perfect example of a
Mhm.
body of scientific research that is very interesting and promising as a body of research to tell us how the mind, the developing mind, goes about making sense of the written language. Doesn't tell you much about a classroom with 20 kids,
right.
4 of whom have parents who don't read, 10 of whom have parents who do read really well and teach at a college, kids who are deaf in one ear, a teacher who had her own bad experiences with school, et
Mhm.
cetera, et cetera. So it's a very layered, dynamic
Mhm.
context, and that science taken on its own doesn't help you with that very noisy, lively situation. So I sat there in my study thinking, so which is it? What am I doing? How do I get a picture of this, of what's really going on in schools today? And then I thought, I know, I'll look for myself. I mean, it was really that simple and unfancy. I thought, okay, as soon as this, you know, quarantine goes, which I was hoping and praying it would, I'm going to go around the country and visit and see for myself. And I had a fair amount of confidence that I would see something meaningful because I've been in this field a long time. I work in a scientific context, but I also spend a lot of time in schools. I've been a teacher, so I thought, okay, I trust myself to look and see something. And an old friend of mine who's a really great and eminent journalist, I said, "Is this a bad idea? Me, just a psychologist going just to visit? And what is that a good idea or a bad idea?" And she said to me, "You won't know till you've visited a few schools. If you see them and everything you see is what you expected, it's a bad idea. But if you visit some schools and something puzzles you or surprises you, it's a good idea." And so I followed that advice, and certainly almost immediately, some things started to puzzle and surprise me. So I kept going. That's the origin story of the book.
That's a great story. I love how you made a connection to science of reading. As a former reading
Yeah.
specialist, when that first started to roll out, I was in a lot of classrooms because I get in classrooms throughout the week when I'm working. And teachers were alarmed at first when science of reading started rolling out because of all the programs they had to implement to address phonics.
Hmm.
But I especially like what you noted, how every child's different. It doesn't matter if we're using the science of reading techniques, if this child's coming with a different background. And
Right.
all that so frequently in the classroom when I was a teacher. You have
It's
to address
true.
the kid first before you
It's a
can
great way to put it.
address literature techniques.
That's the thing. I mean, what you just said is the key thing to me from my observations. Yes, you have this body of scientific knowledge that
Mhm.
informs what you do as a reading specialist or a classroom teacher.
Mhm.
Um, but if you're good at what you do, that's in the back of your head, but the person is right in front of you. And as a classroom teacher, you're also constrained by the other 19 persons who are
Yes,
milling around you.
I know.
And so you can't just adopt it
Mhm.
um, in isolation or in a dogmatic way.
I agree. I would say my best year of teaching was when I had a para in my room full time. So the two of us were in there, and I truly could address child
Right,
needs.
right,
Had another set of hands.
right, right.
The classroom had that. But let's talk a little bit about all of your visits. You visited, I believe, 29 kindergarten classrooms across 14 states over 2 years.
Hmm.
What was it like to enter so many different learning environments, both as a researcher and an observer?
Well, it was amazing. It's probably my favorite project I've ever done. It was amazing. And I would say I didn't just enter the classroom. First, I had to enter the community.
Mm.
And I knew that going in. I knew I wanted to do that because we know so much now about the way in which a particular neighborhood or community shapes what happens in a school. And it should. So, because schools have to express and have a hand in their community. So that was always my starting place. Where am I? Are there fields? Are there skyscrapers? Is there a factory? Is there a university nearby? Are people farmers? Are they business? All those things.
Mm.
Um, and where is the school? Is it in the middle of town? Is it separated? All of those things were interesting to me. And I try to convey that in the book. I don't write about, I mean, I have data on all of those schools, but not all of them make their way into the book. Um, and then I got to the school, and honestly, it's the youngest I've felt in a long time. And the reason I say that, I haven't said that before, but it's because everything felt new to me. I was like, oh, look
Mm.
at this. It's an old building and it clearly wasn't always a school. Or, oh, look, this school is right next to four different religious places of religion, and they're not the same religions. That was in Queens, which I do write about because that was so
Oh,
amazing.
yeah.
So all of that I took stock of. And also, and this has been written about by quite a few people. Um, I'm forgetting the most famous uh, savage inequalities.
Mm.
Jonathan Kozel. But Ted Sizer has wrote about this years ago too. Some buildings are well cared for and have windows that close, and you walk in and there's nice little kid furniture. Some buildings, one of the ones that stood out for me was in Baltimore, in a very low income and racially stressed community where everything was slightly shabby but incredibly welcoming and incredibly child oriented. So there was a contrast between what was shiny and bright and cared for
Mhm.
and what looked like a place that cared for children. So that's how I just give that as a background that I kind of looked at everything. And then I would get into the classroom, and I really love to be in classrooms. Like I'm really at home in a classroom. Um, and so I'd take my little seat over in the corner. I most always sat on a little child seat somewhere and begin to watch everything. And I said this in the book, and I'll say it to you guys. One of the things that was not sciency about me, I tried to be very sciency in certain ways. Like I took the best notes of my life. I basically had hundreds of pages of notes at the end. I wrote down everything I saw. Um, and described everything I saw. But the non-sciencey part of me was that I really like I've realized now that I have grandchildren, I really, really identify with kids.
Mhm.
And I really love them. And I love 5-year-olds. And so certain classrooms, and I think now I look through at every classroom, especially because I had two grandchildren in kindergarten for some of that work. And I think, would I want my grandchild here?
Mhm.
And sometimes I actually couldn't, I wanted to leave so badly, but I didn't. I stayed. But that is to say, I didn't remain completely neutral. I had my feelings about where I was sitting. I tried to overcome those. But some classrooms feel very warm and welcoming to children, and some don't feel as warm and welcoming to children. And I tried not to jump to conclusions I mean, I didn't jump to conclusions about why that was, because for me, the book was about answering the question, why is that? What's going on here? Um, I will also say that one of the things, and it's one of the things that surprised me, that kept me going, were the weird things that were the same almost everywhere.
Mm.
And I didn't take, maybe it's obvious, maybe to you two it'll be like, oh, sure, of course those were the same. But it was a surprise to me. I kid you not, almost every classroom had the same carpet.
Oh,
I was like,
yeah.
well, this is not nothing because if you walk into people's houses, there's a different carpet in everybody's house, but not in those. kindergartens. Not every kindergarten had the same carpet. I can think of some very notable exceptions, but they all have a schedule on the wall. Everybody wants their children to begin to understand the sequence of the day. And that was an important clue for me about what's important to teachers and classrooms. Um, I'm trying to think of what else I mean, I detailed this in the book. Every classroom had somewhere for kids to hang their coat and their lunchbox, and some other things that I talk about. I'm blanking out on what they are now. Um, but not every classroom had an area for children to play. And more importantly, the classrooms that did have an area for children to play, the way that was set up spoke volumes about what think about kids and what they think about play. So I'm glad to go back to that if you want. Classrooms were very different. Every classroom had some stuff on the wall, but what was on the wall differed a lot.
Mhm.
I would say the majority of classrooms had like letters, posters, and pictures and mottos that they had ordered from a school supply store.
Mhm.
And some classrooms did not have that. They were just filled with stuff the kids had done.
I
Um,
see that.
yeah,
I love to
yeah,
see the kid work on the
Yep.
walls.
yeah.
So
And
this
why do you? What does it tell you when you see that? I just have to ask.
I feel it's more child oriented when I
Mm,
see the kids work on the walls as opposed
got
to
it.
products bought from a
Yeah,
specialty
yeah.
store.
Yeah,
Okay.
Because
and
then they do
values.
all look the same. Classrooms look the same because they're buying products.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This book resonated so much with me because when I worked in the school system for about 10 years, kindergarten was my wheelhouse. And I got into so many different kindergarten classrooms around Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, but I also worked in Brooklyn, New York in a bunch of different classrooms and I really, relate to what you're saying about the actual structure of the school versus sort of the vibe in the classroom and how it
Right.
could be the most beautiful up-to-date school could not be the most always nurturing for the students versus
Right.
a little more dilapidated older building with not as recent resources, but those children really felt loved, or that
Yeah.
really vary. So that's a
Yeah.
really important distinction.
Yeah.
I'm curious, so I put a lot of effort into kindergarten readiness. That's sort of become the focus of my career at this point. So I'm really curious, after your experiences, what would you say the most important things parents and teachers can do to fully prepare children for kindergarten?
You probably know a lot more about this than I do. Um, because I'm thinking about the word prepare. Uh, because I don't know who your audience is really. I don't know who we're having this conversation with today. But certainly in the middle class community,
Mhm.
um,
Yeah.
prepare often means get them get, get get them a little ahead so when they get to school they already know the things that they're supposed to know when they get to school.
Yeah.
And that's not what I would think of as prepare, and I say that with some trepidation because you may know something I don't know. But kids who go to school, for instance, um feeling comfortable talking to grown-ups, that's a good kind of preparation. But there's nothing you can do about that except enjoy having conversations with your kids. I mean, it's nothing you need to teach them. It's
Right.
nothing you need to practice. It's just knowing that they like to talk and
Mhm.
or do things with you if you're not talkers, that
Yeah.
they know how to do stuff with a grown up.
Yeah.
Um, we know, we've known for a long time that children who are in houses with readers and books that they read, not just books, but books that somebody's reading,
Mhm.
and not always to the children. Like we know that children who grow up in a house where grown-ups read them for themselves are going to have an easier time learning to read. There's no question about it. And better yet, if the grown-up reads to themselves for various purposes, I read the newspaper for news, I read fiction to give myself pleasure to laugh or cry or whatever. Um, I read manuals to know how to put something together, all those things. That's good. And so it's wonderful when parents read to children. Um, the reason I'm being so hesitant here is because some parents take this as another. I wrote another book about parenting where I pointed out that it's not a job, it's a relationship.
Thank you.
And I worry about parents who see this all as a job. What do I have to do to get my kid ready? And
I
that's
agree.
not it's not a great way into it. So I would say that also, it's interesting. Um, so I was a school lover from not the day I was born, but certainly the day I entered any kind of school setting. And my mom was a school lover, and my grandmother was a school lover. My husband, who had um, it was from a very educated family and went to what were quote unquote good schools in New York City, he was a school hater. And my kids grew up with two very different messages
Mm.
when they were young. I was like, oh, show me what you got. Show me what's in came home today. And my husband wanted to talk about something else with them.
Mhm.
And the reason I say that is parents bring to their kids' school experiences their own school experiences. So I guess there's something in there about what kids bring with them to school. And one of the things they bring are their parents' attitudes about school.
Oh,
Um,
big show.
so that I don't know how much control anybody has over that, but it's
Right,
something.
right.
So I don't know if that's what you mean by prepare, but for me, the best preparation is just the things that parents do when they enjoy having kids and they have a strong relationship with their kid. I
Yeah,
really don't think it's anything.
so simple.
I, it's kind of simple, but not always easy to do.
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
I suppose, we know this is not special. This is not my discovery, but kids who have some experience of routines and how to follow through on routines or how to wait a minute for your turn or
Yep.
Yeah.
how to stand in line for a second or wait to get what you need, all of those things, some what reason my friend is a clinical psychologist would call self-modulation. That helps, but we don't it's not that easy for most. Not all of us have it, number one, and not
Sure.
all of us have the impulse to give it to our kids.
Yeah.
So that's sort of murky waters. I don't know what teachers can do. Make your classroom a place that kids want to be.
I
I
Perfect.
mean,
agree. Yeah. I,
yeah,
Yeah.
I think children that arrive in kindergarten with experiences and background knowledge and those conversational skills, they flourish in the classroom. You can see their light bulbs turning, whereas others without some of those experiences, sometimes
yeah.
it's harder to grasp concepts. So, yeah, parents just need to read and have conversations
I
and
have a, and that's easier for some
yeah,
people than others because if
it
you're
is.
working
Yeah,
harder under a lot of duress,
true.
um,
Yeah,
it's
very true.
harder to do those things, and it's hard to be told you must do those things or you're a bad parent. That's the thing.
Oh gosh.
Um,
Yes.
so I saw schools in so many different kinds of neighborhoods that I was very aware of that. But actually, the thing that I think is that one thing I think about kindergarten is if you get kids who haven't had that at home,
Hmm.
you can't somehow bypass that. You have to do it in your classroom. And that's one way in which classrooms have to be responsive to their communities. If you have a group of children who haven't had a lot of conversations, and that is going to limit their ability to learn to read, the answer isn't to have more focused reading instruction. The answer is to have more conversations, like to give them the thing they didn't get that they really need to get
Yeah.
to become readers. Like it's not like, oh, well, that's too late. They missed conversations. No, no, no to to parents, but we'll make up for it by drilling the kids. That's not the answer.
Oh, that brings me, I wanted to ask you this, and maybe you've already answered it. What did you learn about young children that every parent and educator should know?
God, I love that question. I saw it in the note you sent me. Um, I have to admit, this is going to sound arrogant, but I'm not sure I learned something, but I was convinced in the most vivid way possible of something that had been lurking in the back of my head all along. 5-year-olds are really intense and passionate young people. And there's a world of thought and feeling going on in them.
So true.
Though I guess the one thing I did learn, and I take that back, that comment I made before. I did learn something, and it makes me feel silly about myself. I learned that there was a lot more to that old book. I always forget who wrote it. I always misattribute this book. It's called Your 5-Year-Old. It's like a very gazelle type view of maturation. We sort of discarded those books. There was a Your 5-Year-Old and a Your 7-Year-Old. I don't remember. They're from long ago. And I got one of them out and read it. And it talks about how amenable, how cheerful 5-year-olds are. And they're not always cheerful. There's no question. And they're kids with issues. I saw some very odd kids, and kids that were hard to like, which I think is a real challenge for a parent or a teacher. But and I'm sympathetic. I wrote about some of those in my book.
Yes.
But I will say that the vast majority of 5-year-olds, they want to be good. They want to do well. They want to learn things. They want to be friends. They want to be liked. They're sort of bubbling with goodness is the only way I can put it.
Oh, yes.
And yeah, and sometimes they're bubbling over. So I get
Yeah.
it. It can be hard to handle a group of all those bubbles.
Yes.
But and some of the bubbles are bursting in the middle. So you're like, oh help. Uh I just One of the teachers I admired, nobody else has heard this story because I just found it out. One of the teachers that I learned the most from during this project, who was really an amazing teacher, and actually I ended up, after the book was over, visiting her several more times in her classroom, and I saw that it wasn't just one group that she was amazing with, it was another group. And
Mhm.
recently we got together, and I hadn't seen her in this year at all, but still school was still going on when I saw her. It was back in March. And I said, "How's your class? How's it going?" She said, "Oh my God, Susan," she said, they're terrible."
Oh,
And she
no.
said it with this warm, loving smile. And I said, "Oh my gosh, you have a class of terribles?" She said, "That's it. They're the terribles."
Oh, no.
And she said, "You got to come see." So I went to watch, and I thought, "Oh my gosh, this group is tough." And
Mhm.
I could see her, still a fabulous teacher, but really pushed to the edge of her limits by how many
Mhm.
difficult things were going on in the classroom. And then, oh my goodness, at the end of the year, she said, "Just wanted you to see this mural that the kids made." And that they had looked at a famous painting by Norman Rockwell of many different kinds of people gathering together to create a community or something like that. And her kids, inspired by that, had made their own mural of themselves.
Oh,
And
Wow.
it was one of the most beautiful pieces of children's art I'd ever seen.
That's neat.
And I said, "The Terribles did this?"
yeah.
And she laughed, and I thought, this is another book, The Terribles, because
Oh,
every teacher has a group like that at some
yeah.
point. And to me, this captured the point, which is, this is not about easy groups and difficult groups. This teacher too had a Terribles group, and
Mhm.
look at what came out finally with all her work during the year.
That's what I was thinking. Every teacher that I've spoken to in the past, and they've had their terrible years, they still did amazing things with that
Yeah,
group of children.
yeah,
No matter
yeah.
what the children are like when they come in at the beginning of the year, by the end, they're amazing. Teaching
Yes,
such great work.
yeah.
My daughter's a brand new kindergarten teacher. Like
Ah,
you can imagine, I love so much.
congratulations.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I
Mhm.
get to go in as guest reader, but I'm secretly sizing up everyone and seeing who needs occupational therapy. And my mom volunteers in her class every Wednesday.
Oh,
Just listening to the two of them talk about the children in
wow.
class just makes my heart so happy. And I just can relate to, they
Yeah,
have these children that just sometimes they jive and sometimes they don't, and the
right.
challenges, and it's just so fun. It's really
Yeah.
rewarding to hear that.
You know, and I mean, the thing is, you must be so proud, because that was another thing. It was one of the decisions I made before I did the project, but it was totally vindicated by the experience. When people ask me how I chose kindergarten, and to be honest, originally I was going to do kindergarten in ninth grade because I wanted to sort of take stock of the whole school picture across the country. And a good friend who's a colleague, a very knowledgeable, educated person, said to me, "You're crazy. You can't do that, man. Don't look at that many."
A
He
lot.
said, "Pick one." And
Mhm.
Yeah,
that was instant decision on picking five. That's the
yeah,
beginning. everything. And that's the age I know most about developmentally.
Uh-huh.
But I also realized it both in doing research, reading the science of education and also watching,
Yeah.
it sets a path for every kid. So kindergarten teachers, it's not the the seriousness of their task is not simply or narrowly that they're setting kids on the path to reading, one hopes. That's the big focus right now
Yeah.
in the public discourse.
Mhm.
And yes, reading is important. I'd be the first to say how important it is, and
Mhm.
it's very important for school success. So far, 10 years from now, it might not be, but now it still is. But there's something even more or as important, which
Mhm.
is that's where kids learn whether they like school and
Right.
whether they see themselves as people who can thrive in school.
Yeah.
And that's a really important, well, either turning point or
Yeah.
set point
Mhm.
so kindergarten teachers are doing this incredibly important work,
I agree.
even though the nation doesn't pay that much attention to it.
Yeah.
Mm.
Absolutely. So true.
Yeah.
So, we have to ask you about a topic that is very important to Crystal and myself that we talk about a lot. And we're actually writing a book right now about the importance of play. So, I want to ask about the
Okay.
role that you saw, play and
Yeah.
curiosity. What
Yes.
role did play and curiosity have in the most successful classrooms that you went into?
Oh my God. So much.
Yeah.
And I'm writing a new book too that will talk a lot about play, but I'm certain it's not in the same way as you because I
Oh,
we probably come to it with our own interests
yeah.
and um concerns. But I think I think that I mean this we probably totally agree on. When you watch children play in a non-school context,
Mhm.
as I do, and a lot of my research and a lot of the research by other developmental psychologists uses play as a vehicle, as a window onto what they want to know about,
Mm.
whether it's moral development or intellectual skills of some certain kind or interpersonal skills, all the things we want to know about.
Yeah.
How do we find out about them? By watching kids play.
Mhm.
But there's more to play than that. It's what children do. That's the vehicle by which they develop. It's the means by which they acquire all the things we want them to acquire. And I don't want to say right now what I think that is because I'm trying to put it together into my book. 'Cause that's part of what my book is going to be about. But but even if you stick to the thing I'm most interested in, which is intellectual development, how we learn to think our thoughts, how we learn to put together an idea, which I think is well, that's what I'm interested in. So it's almost all happening in the context of play. So, and I still feel that for all the experts, you two, me,
Mhm.
Kathy Hirsch-Pasek, um, um, oh my God, I'm blanking on her colleague's name, Roberta Golenkoff.
Yeah. Yep.
Sorry, Roberta, I love you. I remember your name. Um, for all that we each come to this focused on play, this is not something teachers understand very well. Some teachers do. I had a teacher, I quoted her in the book, who said, If I want them to learn to think, I have to help them, I have to give them chances to play."
Mm.
We
Yeah.
may not all agree on what the role of the adult is in that playing. My guess is we don't all agree, but we probably do agree that step one is to make it an important part of your curriculum.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you, the teacher, has to know something about what can happen during that play, what is possible. Because if you don't know, it's the same with conversation, I mean, which is another favorite topic of mine. If you can't hear what's going on that's important for children in a conversation, that they get to ask questions, that they get to speculate, that they get to learn to put knowledge together across two people's minds, that
Mhm.
they get to make connections they can't make in the actual physical world. All those intellectual skills that can happen in conversation. If you don't know what to be listening for, it's hard to encourage it or nurture it.
Yeah.
Leave
Mm.
aside guide it. Just know what's happening. So the same. with play. So that's that the first thing is there a place for kids to play? Like literally, is there time and place for them to play? And does the teacher see it as a break from the important work or as an opportunity for the important work? And so that's, I don't know if that answered your question. And
Hmm.
it's not that I don't think other things need to be happening. Kids need help, some kids more than others, with learning certain basic things about sounds and letters and words. I don't debate that at all. But it's understanding that this is as important
Hmm.
and as necessary for the very skills that we think, so I reject the language of hard skills and soft skills. Totally reject. I'm only even saying them to say I reject them. Um, but if you want to categorize them, if you must, it's a hard skill that you get from playing.
Play.
It's not
Yep.
a soft skill.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, you're
I
so
don't know if
right.
that.
They do merge, hard and soft.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, and
Yeah.
it's a very
Some ways.
gendered language, and
Yeah.
it sets us up for falling apart on all the soft skills because, of
Yeah.
course, in a male-dominated, in a patriarchy, we think the hard skills are more important than the soft skills. It's just,
Yeah.
I
Interesting.
just reject. But nevertheless, I think that if I could wish for something, you didn't ask me about this, but I'll just say it. If I could wish for one of the things I wish we would approach a little differently in helping teachers be their best selves
Yeah.
Hmm.
is that they would get more support and help in learning how to watch kids play, learning how to share in their play, to make play spaces that are enticing to children. And I'm saying nothing about guiding their play, or I'll leave that to other people who that's more their thing.
Yeah.
um I mean, the best teachers I saw didn't guide play, they just played along with kids some of the time, and some of the time they watched.
Hmm.
But I don't want to make an argument out of that. I
Sure.
just want to say that even without knowing much about how to guide it, or even if you don't think that's your role, emphasizing it is really important.
Yeah, that's a very important piece because teachers may not feel comfortable getting down on the floor and engaging in play and really knowing how to scaffold that play and what to take away from the observations they make during play. So
Yeah.
that's a really important piece.
And
Yeah.
honestly, I'm not sure they need to scaffold the play.
Mhm.
Um, Close your ears, Kathy and Roberta. But sometimes it's just about um, actually playing with them.
Uh-huh. Of
You're
course.
scaffolding by being a grown up.
Yes.
That's what grown ups naturally do.
Yeah.
That's
I
what they
think,
do when they
yeah,
talk with kids.
Right.
So,
we need to give them permission to play because sometimes
and
teachers feel like play isn't learning, or they do, but they're nervous about covering curriculum and standards.
right, or trying to improve the kids' play, and that's not good either. I mean, this
No.
is the gift that grandparenting has given me, which
Uh,
I couldn't give a shit about whether I'm improving their development or not. I
Yeah.
just want to have fun. I want them to like me. But I do find that that our playtimes together, I mean, my grandson, he lives next door. My grandkids live right next door to
oh,
me. So they come over all the time and they're like, let's play. And
Oh,
I'm
I love
actually
that.
not that good. I'm not that playful, actually, in that domain. I'm
Yeah.
playful in other domains, but I do it because I love them and I want to be with them. And I don't try to
Yeah.
do anything to improve them. I'm just like,
but
let's
just
have
being with
fun.
them,
Yes.
just being with them, you're giving them you're giving them that relationship, the social, there, yeah, just
Well,
being
and I'm
part of it.
giving them intellectual input without
Yeah,
meaning to, because I'm
exactly.
playing like a 66-year-old with a big vocabulary
Yeah.
and, knowing how to do certain things physically they don't know how to do. So
Right.
how can I not be scaffolding?
Exactly. It's happening
Yeah.
naturally. Yeah. I
So
love it.
thinking about that, if you could design the ideal kindergarten classroom, what would it look like, feel like, and
Oh,
sound like? That's our last question.
okay. Um, what would it look like? It would look and feel
Mhm.
like me and like my students.
Ah,
It be you have to be yourself as a teacher. You have to be a real person.
yes.
And I would have to bring into my classroom the language, the books, the colors that I love.
Mhm.
but that could not be the only thing in the classroom. It would have to reflect what I know about 5-year-olds generally, like that's what I would do in the beginning. And then they would have to help me make the classroom feel like our own environment.
Yeah.
So that's one thing. It would have, I talk a lot in the book about the difference between having kids photographs with their name under them
Mm.
and having kids do self-portraits.
Yeah.
So you know not only what the kid looks like, but what the kid wants to look like and what they think they look like. Because then you walk into the classroom as an outsider and you think, oh, I know who's here.
Yeah.
And it's a different kind of understanding. So it would have that. It would have really wonderful places to play, but also places for kids to choose what to make and what to do with their hands and what books to read. There would be a really enticing reading corner.
Yeah.
Um, and there would be materials that were accessible to them. When I say enticing reading corner, I mean a comfortable place to sit. Although one of my favorite, I think there's an illustration of this that I did from an artist did from my description of a kid lying on his back with his legs over his head, reading a book upside down in the library of a book of a class. I loved it so much. So, what comfortable means to a 5-year-old might not be what it means to somebody else.
Right.
But also books that are really interesting and interesting to different kids and beautiful to look at and unexpected, not just the books that I've been told are right for a 5-year-old reading level. Those are good too, but um, those would be the thing if that's what it would look like. What else would you see if you visited my classroom? I mean, if I were good enough to do this, which I no longer am. I maybe was good enough to do this, but when I was 30, but um, you would hear children talking to each other and you would hear them talking to grown-ups and not just about the topic. They'd be talking about what happened at home. They'd be imagining the scariest thing they could possibly see out the window. They'd be arguing about the best kind of shoes to wear. They'd be, you know, conversation would have a really big place. And
Mhm.
then, you know, Amy mentioned something before that I didn't address, but for you probably already know that I have done a lot of research on curiosity, and I think curiosity plays a really important role in the classroom. And my classroom that I would want, you would see kids trying to find things out and being given a chance to find things out
Yeah.
a lot of the time with their questions, with their gazes, with their fidgeting. And some of those things would be deliberate long searches. We're going to spend a
Mhm.
month finding this out, and
Yeah.
some would be 15-minute conversations.
So important.
So
Oh, love it.
Ooh,
My
I
daughter's
love
classroom
it.
is very Taylor Swift inspired. So
ah,
when you
oh
speak,
God,
what interests
lucky.
you?
Oh
Yes.
my God, I love that. I would
Yeah.
add one thing. Can I add one thing?
Of course.
Because I didn't see it in enough classrooms, but I saw it in enough to know how good it is. You'd see hugs. You'd see
Oh,
kids
yes.
hugging each other,
Lots
touching
of
each other.
hugs.
Kids need to touch.
Yep.
Grown-ups should be free to hug kids.
Yes.
Kids like to hug grown-ups.
Yes.
5-year-olds are still very much in their bodies,
Yes.
and they're entitled to that.
I love that. I'm so glad you said
Mm.
that. And that is one of the things I'm most proud of my daughter. I watch her stand up there and teach, and children can just stand up and come up to her while she's up there teaching, and they know they can get a hug and go sit back
Oh,
down. So
so
children
That's
good.
important.
need that. They need that. So,
Yeah,
They
they do.
do.
oh my gosh. Well, we could go on all day, but we know
Yeah.
our mommies are busy, so we try to keep our podcast to a limit. So we will wrap up, but we have gotten so many amazing tips from you and learned so much
Good.
today. So thank you so much. And thank
Total
you.
pleasure.
Yes, thank you to our listeners for listening to Plant a Seed of Learning. We want to thank our guests, past and present, for sharing their knowledge and work. A special thank you to our producer, Penn Ketchum. You can find our podcast wherever you listen on YouTube, Spotify, or Apple. We can't wait to learn from you and plant more seeds of learning together.